If you don't know what is Intersection Observer API and how you can use it in order to create extremely fast website, then you better stay with me and let's learn it together. Hey, what's up guys? Sinead here from codepassiveincome.com, the place where I help others to become a web developer much easier and faster than they'll do it on their own. So if that's something that interests you, make sure that you subscribe. Now, before we start talking about Intersection Observer API, let's take a look here at this basic document. So as you can see, this is just HTML document with 14 different images that we load, and that's it. Now the main problem here is when the website loads, we are going to load all the images immediately. So when I refresh, you are able to see that I have downloaded 36 megabytes of the data because those images are really big. And for those that are using the mobile devices or that are visiting this website for the first time, or they are on the slow internet connection, that might be a huge problem. Now in the past, what we will usually do is we will set some triggers so that when someone scrolls through the page or if the browser is resized, we are going to do some calculations and check if the image in this case is going to be visible, and then in that case we are going to load the image, and that's something that we call lazy loading. Now there is a new and a much better way, because the main issue with those that I have mentioned is that there's constantly we are doing calculations on the main thread, and that is going to slow the devices a lot. And now there is something new that we call Intersection Observer API. And now for those of you that never heard of it before, I will definitely suggest that you grab this link in the description of the video and go and read the entire documentation and really see how you can use it in all your projects, because it's very powerful and it's very important that you understand it properly. And of course I'm not able to cover everything in this video, but I'm going to talk and show you how you can implement it. So basically, what is Intersection Observer API? It gives us an ability so that we can, for each element that we want, we are able to set some callback function. So when that element is inside the viewport, and as a viewport we can define it some element, or it can be device viewport, whatever you decide. And then when that element is in the viewport, we are able to execute the callback function by the observer and then do something with that. And usually we are going just to load that element. So let's see how that works in the practice, and I'm going to show you different options how we can use it. So first off, what we are going to do is we want to change the source of the image to some different attribute so that it's not anymore, so that we don't anymore use source, because by default we are going to load all the images. So now of course if we refresh, nothing will be there because we do not load any image. And now one of the usual problems that I see people make and have big challenge with Intersection Observer API is that they remove the source, but they also don't define any image width and height. And basically if that is the case, that our image is basically the size of the 0 pixels, and you can have as many images as you want, they will all be instantly loaded to the DOM, and then Intersection Observer API won't work properly. So before we move on, I want to make sure that those images are with some specified width and height. So I'm going to say style type, okay, and for all images, let's say I will just say width 800 pixel by, let's say 800 pixels. It's not important for this case scenario. Okay, now the next thing that we want to do is we are going to write some JavaScript so that we are able to use Intersection Observer API. Now the first thing that we need to do is we need to target all the elements that we want to, for which we want to implement this technique. So I will say var image equal document dot query, let's say selector all, and then I want it to be for the all images. Now the next thing that we need to do is we need to define one observer. So I can say observer equal new intersection observer, and now this intersection observer needs two parameters. The second one is optional, the first one is a must. So first one is callback function, and the second one is the object of the options, and we are going to talk about this one a little bit later. Now for the callback function, I will just say function, and then again this function is going to receive two parameters. One is all the entries, and then the second one is the observer. Okay, and that's it. And now, as I said earlier, the last thing that we need to do is that for all the elements we need to set the observer function. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I will say image dot for each, I will say, let's say img. Okay, and then I will say observer dot observe our img, and that's it. Now for every image we have set the callback function, which is our observer, and after that the next thing that we need to do is we need to go through all entries. So I will say the same thing, entries dot for each. So let's say entry, and okay, and now let's say we will just print it to the console log, and I will say entry, so that we can see what are the options that we have inside each entry. So let's see. Now when we lazy load, nothing will happen, but in the console log you can see now that we have 14 different intersections. But what is the important is this part here that is say is intersecting, which means now we are able to detect which element is in the viewport and which is not. And as you can see here, they say that basically the first one is in the viewport and all the others are not. Of course, down below we are able to use the other methods and other properties like bounding line track, intersection ratio, etc, etc. Okay, but for now let's just stick with is intersecting. So now what we want to do is we want to say if entry dot is intersecting. That means that we see this image, it's in the viewport, and then we are going to say okay, our image, so let's say image is entry dot target, and we now just need to set the attribute source. Okay, and we will get it from img dot get attribute, and it's data source, so it's this one. Okay, and after this we need to say observer dot unobserve this img, which is entry dot target. Okay, we can do it like this, or we can say entry dot target, whatever. Okay, let's see now what will happen. So now when we refresh, you will see that first image has been loaded. Okay, and now if we easily scroll, now immediately when this image gets into the viewport, that image is loaded. Now we will go to the next one. Okay, and it works. So you can see how basically now we are able to load image by image, and this way this page is much faster, because as you can see when I refresh, at first we only load 472 kilobytes, and it's extremely small comparing with 36 megabytes that we have at the beginning. Now there are a couple of different options that we are able to do in order to modify our observer even more, so we can like make it work the way we want. And for that we use the second parameter that is here, that is called options. You can define as an external object or whatever you want. I will just work directly here. Now I'm going to talk only about the three the most important, and for those of you that are looking to really dive deep and get a lot more information, then definitely check the link for the documentation. First one that I want to talk about is root margin, and basically this one is we can use in order to set when we are going to load the element. Now we have set when it is intersecting, but now we can redefine that even further, and we can say, okay, for me intersecting is only when, for example, we are 200 pixels in the viewport. So we can say like this. So we are able to use the same thing that we use in CSS for the margin. So let's say here from the top I'll say 0 pixel right, 0 pixel bottom, let's say it's minus 200 pixels, and left 0 pixel. So let's see what will happen. So now when I refresh, the first image is loaded, and now as you can see this is the second image and it's still not loaded. So basically what is happening that from the bottom, because this is our viewport, and from the bottom we are waiting for 200 pixels to be loaded, and only then we are going to load the image. So when I scroll slowly, you can see at some point we are going to load the image. Now of course we are able to use the percentage here, so I can say minus 10%. So when I refresh, and you can see, okay, boom, it's loaded, and that's the whole idea. Okay, now we can redefine this even further, and we can say that we want to have some threshold, which means basically that we are able to define how many pixels of the picture we want to load, and the value that we use here is from the 0 to the 1. So let's say if I say 0.5, that means that at least half of the image needs to be loaded in order for me to see it. So when I scroll to the top, and let's go again, you can see now it's going to wait for the half of image, and then it's going to be loaded. Okay, boom. Okay, and now of course if we are going to define as a 1 or 1.0, it's going to be the same. So let me close this so that we can actually see it. Fresh. Now we need to actually see the entire image before it's loaded inside the viewport. Of course you need to understand that there is always down below minus 200 pixels. So basically we say it's minus 200 pixel is the first starting point, and then we are going to load the entire image, and then we are going to show it. So that's why you can see at, let's say, this point we see the entire image, but it's not loaded because there is minus 200 pixels. So when we load even more, now it's there. Okay, hope that makes sense. And now of course if you want to hide this image, like a preview that there is an image, we can do something like here, image without, so let's say source, we can say visibility hidden, and this should work. Okay, so let's see. Okay, no, let's see why. Okay, my mistake here. Okay. Okay, now as you can see, when we scroll, there isn't anything. You can't notice that there is any image, and then it will be loaded. Now, of course, you will want to do something like without threshold, so we can say 0, and then we are going to say only on the 10%, so it will be ultra beat smooth. Okay, you can see now that it works much better. And now the last thing that you can do is you can define the root, and I'm not going to show you this because it's pretty much the same thing, but basically what we are able to do is we can, for example, create one div, let's say, and we can say that is our scroll, and then only when this element is inside this block of the code, let's say div or span or paragraph or table or whatever the case might be, only in that case we are going to load the element, but everything else is going to work pretty much the same. So yeah, pretty much that's it. It's very simple, it's very useful, and it can help you increase the page speed extremely a lot. And yeah, once again, make sure that you check that documentation and really learn this very valuable skill. So yeah, guys, if you have any questions or anything, please ask me in the description below. And of course, if you like this video and find it helpful, please like it and share it to your friends. Take care.